Join us on Elisha Space, where mental health meets spirituality. Today, we talk with Joe Ryan, a certified peer coach who helps people find self-acceptance and authenticity through their pain. We'll discuss the importance of acceptance during difficult times. Dive into healing with host Elisha.
Thank you, audience, for joining me today with Elisha Space. It is such a pleasure and an honor to have you join us today. I have Joe Ryan with me. This is an individual that takes people out of their pain by guiding them through their pain towards self-acceptance and authenticity. I greatly wanted him to be on the show today because he helps people to break free from childhood programming, emotional paralysis, and family system roles. So, because he is so involved in those things, he talks about things that are in line with anxiety, shadow work, family systems, recovery, all things that are also reflective of Elisha's space. And because we have had these types of conversations on this podcast, I thought that Joe would be a great addition. So I wanted to thank you for joining us today, Joe. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
Can you share a bit about your journey and what led you to the work that you do today?
Sure. I started drinking and taking prescription drugs at 10 years old. I OD'd at 17. I had gotten clean in my mid 20s, and I was clean and sober for about 17 years. And then I just had a run of, I don't know if you call it bad luck, but there was a lot of traumatic things that had happened. I was married. I had 2 kids. I was kind of perfected my family system role, and everything was going good. Had the house, the wife, the 2 kids, the money, the cars, the vacation. The business started to tank. The marriage followed soon as the money went away. Started to think about divorce and being single and moving out. Was in bankruptcy, broke. And then I ended up meeting somebody after I got out of my marriage. And then she had gotten hit by a car when we were start our lives together. So losing the home, the wife, the kids, the money, the job, the self-esteem, everything that covered up my inadequacies, my lack of self-worth was gone. I was left in my shame. I met this woman. First time I feel like I was ever truly in love. Took her away on vacation, and then she got hit by a car on top of everything. That kind of spiraled me down to a point that I've had several bottoms in my life, but this bottom was by far the worst. I ended up homeless, broke. Family couldn't support me, didn't know what to do with me. So I felt like I was just isolated on this island. And the journey back became, I always ran and covered up my lack of self-worth with achievements, accomplishments, money, and status. And when that was all stripped, I was left with what was really always there, just self-hate and shame. And, I was in my 40s when this had happened, and I was just sitting there in these incredibly disgusting feelings that were always there, but I never took the time to acknowledge them, and I couldn't get out of them. I'd lost my motivation and pretty much my will to live. If it wasn't for my kids, I always say I probably wouldn't have been here because the emotional pain was so great. And then to finish out the long story, I was trying to date at this point, and this woman, she was a bit of a narcissist and kept gaslighting me, and we got into this heated exchange, and it took me back to childhood memories that I wasn't previously aware of. That broke me down completely, and there was this cathartic release of tears and sobbing and anger. And when I was done with that 4-hour breakdown, there was a calm and a peace within me that I had never experienced before. I was raw and I was vulnerable in a way that I had never been before. And there was that sense of peace. So that's how I started to get into the feeling work that my whole life I had avoided feeling by accomplishments and addictions and sex and gambling and all of that. So when you're left alone with none of that, you're stuck in your feelings. And by processing the feelings, I had gotten to this place of clarity. So that's when I started leaning into the vulnerable feeling work.
Thank you for sharing. So, your story is somewhat similar to mine. Now, I didn't go as deep in some of the things that you had, your experiences, but it was like back to back things that were happening. And for me, it just made sense within my own healing work to reach out to others as well within their healing work. Is that how you became a peer counselor? Can you tell me a little bit more about what that was like for you?
Yes. So after that big revelation and kind of bottoming out, I knew I needed to talk to somebody. And I ended up firing about 9 therapists in about 4 months because the place I needed to go was so heavy and so dark that they've never had an experience like that I started to get closer towards what I needed to talk about. They had taken me out of my feelings. And the last one that I fired, she recommended me to this domestic violence place out on Long Island. And they weren't licensed therapists, but they were more peer advocates and counselors in that respect. And the work I did with this woman, Denise, was so profound that I could go to those deep, dark places. And she sat there with me and allowed me to take myself where I needed to go. And she was holding that space that I wanted to give that back to others. So she met me at my pain level, and I have a deep reservoir of pain that I had to work through. So I wanted to be for others what I needed when I was going through it. So then I got licensed to be a peer advocate.
Can you share a little bit about what you do, how you help people go from their place of pain to a place of healing?
Yeah, there's no cookie cutter approach to my coaching practice. Everybody comes in at a different place. We end up getting to the same place once we start peeling away layers, but I'll have some people that come in there, people pleasing, nice person role, and they don't want to upset, and they're not able to really go into the feelings because they're still in their role. Then I have other people that will come in and tell me the worst things that ever happened to them in the first 4 minutes. And then there's people that are in the middle. So I take my approaches based on who's in front of me and what their capability of going into the hurt and the pain. And I will slowly start dropping breadcrumbs to see if they respond. And if they make a turn and they don't follow the breadcrumb trail, I know that that isn't a path that I can go down with them at that moment. And I'll slightly adjust to see where I can start to get them opening up. Because most of us live in shame, and shame likes hiding. So I know how difficult it is for people to show up at my doorstep, and to come out of hiding and to go into their pain and their humiliation, their shame is extremely difficult, and it should be taken with extreme care.
I agree with your comment about shame because I think a lot of people, because you mentioned that you were referred to a domestic violence type of organization. And I know with that population, there's a lot of shame, both for the batterer as well as for the survivor. And that's part of the reason why they carry the mask for such a long period of time. How do you help people navigate their pain? How do you help people process and navigate their pain? What is that like?
Well, first, it's building trust. They're going to have to trust me. So when clients come to me with the free consultation, it's really to see if I'm a good fit for them. And if they feel like they can relate and then they sign up for coaching, the beginning sessions are about building trust and building rapport. And I think the advantage to the way I do it is I don't have a problem putting my story in the mix. So a lot of times if people are having a hard time opening up, I will start to open up about my story so that they can see that it's not me sitting from this place of, like this perch of judgment or intellects. Like I'm in the hurt and I'm in the pain with them. So as I tell my stories, it kind of frees them to open up. If this guy's willing to be vulnerable and show his darkness to me, it's going to be a lot easier for them to show that to me. And then we get that dialogue and build that trust. And then we can slowly start working back to the childhood programming.
So you spoke about childhood programming. For the audience, can you kind of define what that is? And also if you could talk about emotional paralysis, because I feel like that kind of like goes hand in hand sometimes. And what would you say are maybe some of a few steps that people can do just in general that you would recommend with someone who's just beginning that type of a journey?
So a lot of the childhood programming and the false self comes from the feelings that we were allowed to have in childhood and the feelings that we weren't allowed to have. So I suggest to my clients to get a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle on the top of the one column, feelings and emotions that I was allowed to have, and on the other side, feelings and emotions that I wasn't allowed to have. And most of the time, seriously, about 99 out of 100 times, it's going to be I wasn't allowed to have anger, I wasn't allowed to have sadness, I wasn't allowed to have disappointment. So those feelings and those emotions have been cut off from us. So we're only allowed to be happy and helpful and showing up for others while self-abandoning. So if we can write it out on paper in black and white to see it more clearly, I can start to understand what the feelings are that you fear and that you have shame about. So part of the paralysis that will happen is if I'm not allowed to have my anger. So if somebody disrespects me, somebody humiliates me, somebody uses me, somebody takes advantage of me, and I don't have my anger, which is my power, my motivation, and my protection, I'm in conflict within myself. I'm not allowed to have my anger. I fear my anger. When I showed anger as a kid, it was met with more anger. And when you're a kid, these people look like giants to us. So the paralysis becomes I don't have access to these feelings and these emotions. So I'm stuck in this moment of time. So where neglect and abuse happens in childhood, we get stuck there emotionally. We should be growing straight through that path emotionally, and when we're not allowed to have our anger, it's like hitting a wall. And we have to find ways around that wall because we can't grow emotionally with our healthy anger. So we become nice, perfect people pleasing doormats. And that's where we get stuck emotionally because we can't respond. We have no way of responding except internalizing it. And that turns into self-hate, right? If I can't stand up for myself and I feel ashamed, I'm hating on myself because I can't stand up for myself. And you're just stuck in that emotional paralysis. You're ruminating. Like, I'm a guy that was so not in touch with his anger. If you disrespected me at the beginning of July, I'm not going to realize it till the end of July. And then I'm very angry with myself because it took so long and I run it through my head with all the responses I should have had. But it's that delayed reaction. We have to work our way through the programming to actually get to what we were feeling when we were disrespected.
And I'll also add to this in regards to that is a lot of the time, like when I talk with people and they're coming to me for depression, a lot of times the depression, because depression, there's a lot of things with depression. So I'll just make a generic statement, even though not all things are as everybody's case. But a lot of times with depression, it's unmasked anger and it's years of unmasked anger. And a lot of that is tied to a trauma. So what you're saying is very true. And a lot of it has to do with something that happened within the childhood. And until you get to a place where you can really address that and allow yourself to feel those feelings and process what those feelings are, you're really not going to see a significant change until you've really dealt with those types of things. And not everybody is ready for that, I found as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you get comfortable, like you said, you become comfortable wearing the mask. You get comfortable with becoming what you were groomed to become because it's scary to be who you authentically are for some people.
Absolutely. The mask, and I like to call it the false self, right? So I had to adapt who I was to survive in the environment that I was being raised in. So I became something that wasn't me. It was a false self. It was inauthentic, and I needed to be that to survive. By the time the false self is created, we never really had a chance to experience ourselves authentically because it was a survival mechanism. So to undo the false self, right? It happens at traumatic events. It happens at more often than not neglect, right? So neglect is the hidden abuse because you can't know what you didn't get because your environment is the only thing that you know. So you feel depleted in a sense. There's an emptiness. There's like a hole in our soul. So for us to go back to these events that we need to re-experience so that we can process it and reframe it, We have to slowly dismantle the false self. And why is the false self there? It's there so that you don't feel uncomfortable, that you don't feel shameful, disgusting feelings about yourself. So we create the image. So to get back to the place that we need to get to, we have to dismantle that image, that mask, that false self. And that means feeling the feelings that created it.
And I'll even say, when it comes to science, as you do the work, you're reprogramming the triggers within your brain so that it's matching in a more healthy way. So you're not just helping yourself in your heart, but you're also helping yourself physically too, because your body gets affected by what happened before with thinking patterns. I call it the mask, and I know you talked about the false self. I think actually the false self is actually the better term than the mask, because you can take a mask off. But the false self, you kind of have to realize that is what I was programmed to be, but it's not necessarily who I truly am. And walking in the truth of who I truly am is not as easy as taking off a mask. So I like that term better. I use the word mask because you can present your way in different spaces and places and in different environments wearing a mask, and nobody can actually know who you authentically are, especially if you don't know yourself as well. Could you talk a little bit about shadow work and vulnerability and how they affect the healing process as well?
Right. So if I cut off my anger because I was physically abused as a child, if I cut off my anger because if it was met with more anger, right, I'm going to cut that off. So the shadow work is going back to the traumatic places, the neglectful places. It's the parts that are cut off. So for me, the way I frame it is I have to humiliate myself to myself, right? I've had humiliating things happen to me when I was a child, as a teenager, growing up, throughout life. And I block those out. I cut those off. I don't want to feel those feelings of shame. So I have to actually go into the humiliating things that have happened to me in my life. And I have to re-experience them. I have to feel what those feelings are, because I'm afraid of feeling those feelings. I'm afraid of looking at myself negatively because I have such a negative view of myself. Why would I want to open something up in me to feel bad feelings when all I've done is mask these bad feelings for as long as I can remember? So the shadow work is going into your humiliation. It's going into your pain. It's going into your abuse. And it is getting in there. And what we want to do is we want to teach ourselves that we fear our body. We fear the emotions that are going on in our body. So by learning how to sit with the feelings and getting closer to that shadow, we get more comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Then it becomes less painful, because we're learning how to manage when things are uncomfortable that come up in us. If we ignore them, how can we get better at it? If I am not good at something and I don't practice it, I'm never going to get better. So I have to get in there and I have to figure out what the feelings are. Like, I have to tell myself the story of my life, because a lot of it's been redacted by my unconscious. So I got to go in there and I got to see what it is, what it really was, because the way I'm interpreting it is that I'm no good, that I am worthless, that I have no worth and value, that I am unlovable. And I have to go in and I have to see the parts of me that think that about myself, and why, so that I could stop hating on me and I could learn how to start showing up for myself and stop self-abandoning.
So it sounds like you do quite a bit of identity and self esteem. Is that correct?
Yeah, I have no foundation. I'm a house of cards. I'm pretending. I have no idea who I am. So I have to start building this foundation of who I am. I have to find out who I am. And when we define ourselves in a role, whenever you define something, all you're doing is putting a limit on it. Like, how many times in my life that I've wanted to go and do something, and then I go, and my heart and my soul is like, you really want to do this. You think you're going to like it. This is going to bring you joy. And then I go up into my head and go, well, this isn't you. This isn't what you do. How is your family going to look at this? How are your children going to look at it? How are your friends going to judge you by this? How are you judging yourself? And then I talk myself out of it. So I don't take chances, because when you are littered in shame, we have two default modes: perfect or worthless. So I describe it as if that's a passing grade of an A, a failing grade of an F, that if I can't do it perfectly and get an A, I'm not getting off the couch. So part of my recovery was I needed to go out into this crazy world and learn how to get D's and B's and C's because I have trouble feeling humiliated. I have trouble feeling rejected. I have trouble feeling not good enough. So I have to put myself in places that I'm not good, that I'm not great, and learn to become good and great there and build the self esteem in places that you feel you have none.
Could you share some strategies with the audience that they could use or begin to use in order to start to identify their true selves?
So, boundaries, big area. Just sometimes I'll say boundaries to a client and I can see their body change and their face expression change. As soon as they hear the word, the feelings come up of fear, right? So, codependency, that's a people addiction. And codependents have almost no boundaries. So, it's learning how to set the boundaries. So if codependency is a people addiction, right? I'm going to frame it as an addiction, just like I would sexual addiction, drug addiction, gambling addiction, codependency, people addiction. If I can't say no to my drug, I am wide open for being used and abused, taken advantage of, and manipulated. I don't have the confidence and strength in me and the conviction to set a boundary because I don't feel like I have self worth. So, what I tell my clients to do is if they are having an issue somewhere in their life where they feel they need to set a boundary and they're afraid, I tell them to shut their phone off, get in their bed, close their eyes in the dark, and start to visualize the interaction that you're feeling, that you're fearing, so that you can start to feel what comes up in your body. So it's almost like this dry run of building confidence alone, right? If you are with a therapist or a coach, you start working with them, talking it through. Have the coach ask you what's going on in your body, what's your biggest fears, what's the worst outcome, and start to get comfortable with the idea of standing up for yourself. And then the hope is that the person gets comfortable enough taming those body reactions where they can get the bravery and the courage to set a very small boundary. And I mean like small boundary as in if people are inviting you somewhere and you don't want to go, but you don't know how to say no, tell them that you don't want to do it. Honor yourself. Don't betray yourself. I mean, it's a very simple thing to say, I don't feel like going, I'm not in the mood, but it's so difficult for so many of us because we were never allowed to set boundaries. So I would set them in the most non-confrontational situations, just so you get comfortable. When you leading up to when you tell this person you're not going, you're going to be a mess in your body. No matter how much you practice, it's still going to come up. When you do set that boundary and you hang up that phone or you put the phone down from the text message, you're going to be dealing with your guilt, with your shame, with your fear. Process it, start to write it out, speak into a microphone, anything to start to get it out, to identify what you're feeling and why. And then sit with that for a while. And then think about other areas in your life that you're going to want to set boundaries. So the goal really is to start doing things that feel impossible, that are difficult. All fear lies in the wait. Once you do set that boundary and you post process it, you're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to impress yourself that you actually did something that you thought you were never going to be able to do. And if you string 3, 4, 5, 8, 10, 12 of these things together where you impress yourself, you're building confidence, you're building self worth. I have become addicted to impressing myself by moving myself purposely and deliberately out of my comfort zone. Do I hate doing it? Yeah. I hate doing it. I hate feeling uncomfortable. I hate feeling shame, rejection, and humiliation. But if I don't work through it, how am I ever going to learn how to deal with it?
Especially if you weren't given the opportunity or the space or told it was okay to feel those feelings when you were younger. You have to kind of teach yourself that it's okay. Like, it's okay. And that's where growth is at, too, I think. Like, I don't necessarily grow from situations when I'm comfortable. I grow from situations from when I'm uncomfortable. Uncomfortable makes me get up and move. And so sitting in that space where you're uncomfortable and becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable, I think that's a healthy thing to do. So I really like the idea. And also, too, just kind of going into a place of, I'll use a therapy term that's kind of popular, radical acceptance, radically accepting that this is where you are. And in order to get to the next place, this is where you need to be. And being okay with that, I think, is extremely important as well.
Yeah, if you're sitting in the places that you shine, that you are great, that people love you, that you are confident, that you ace whatever it is that you're doing, you're not learning much, right? It's important to have those places. There's your confidence, there's your foundation, there's, sense of self. But it is putting yourself in the places that you want to grow in. And if you want to, it's like going to the gym. If you want a good body, you want to be in shape, you want to be toned, muscles, whatever it is, you can sit on the couch and think about working out all you want. It's not going to change anything. You could think about growing. You could think about the places that you want to start exploring. But unless you get in there and do it, it's not going to change. And it's difficult to get in shape. It takes commitment, it takes effort, it takes pain, it takes willpower. Like, we have to start tapping into that underneath all of the crap, all of the hurt and the worthlessness and the shame and the guilt. There is a source of energy. There is a source of power. There is a source of motivation. There is a source of joy. It is just covered on top of layers of defenses so that people don't see your inadequacies. So accepting the places that you don't feel good about yourself and getting in there and starting to figure out why, you can so slowly start to accept it. There are certain things about me that I absolutely hate. I'm just not exactly sure what they are and why they're there. I just wrap it up into I'm stupid, I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough. Well, let's get into the details and let's start to accept our limitations, because we are human and there are parts of us that are limiting. And when we think that we're supposed to be good at everything and everywhere, because that's what my shame is telling me, I have to fight back on that. And I have to say, it's okay that, I didn't go to an Ivy League school, that I didn't get a master's degree. It's okay. It doesn't make me give me a lack of intelligence. It's just my opportunities where I came from didn't allow for that. I can choose to do that now if I want. So accepting our limitations, not beating ourselves up for having limitations.
I would also say, because you also talk about this as well, is what you're doing is you're encouraging courageous authenticity. You're encouraging you to be your authentic self, even when it's scary. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I know that's your term and I don't want to swipe it, even though it's a cool term, y'all.
Thank you. Maybe I'll get it on. Maybe I'll get a T-shirt with that on there.
You really should. That would be cool.
That's a good idea. Thanks. You're planting seeds. For me, courageous authenticity comes from, just listen to my podcast. It is humiliating. It is shame filled. It is embarrassing. I tell the worst things about myself publicly because I know I can't get there on my own. I cannot work through my shame in my own head because I can't unravel the maze. So the whole concept when I started the podcast, first of all, it wasn't really, nobody was supposed to listen to it. It was just a way of getting it out of me. And I put out really things that make me feel disgusting about myself to the world. And then I post process that and make myself okay with it being out there. Like, I don't talk in way, like, I can't script an episode. I never go in and say, this is what I'm going to talk about. I am uncomfortable in my body and I need to do something about it. And I need to take all of that disgusting, gross, uncomfortable, shameful feelings and I need to put it out in the world. So what happens is the mirror I get back is I never hear, you're worthless, you're useless. You should be ashamed of yourself. I get the complete opposite. I get the words like, oh my God, you put words to the feelings that I could never describe. I've been feeling the same way. I wasn't putting words to it. I've never met anybody speak the things that I have felt. So I'm isolated and alone and bathed in my shame. And I think I'm the only one because I don't want to talk about it to other people. And I wasn't brave and courageous to go put this on somebody else. I was kind of hiding out behind a microphone. So for me, it is being okay with your dirty, with your ugly, and putting it out there and then making yourself okay with it. So I have an episode called Shame Based Addict, and it's been a while. I'm not exactly sure what's in it, but the title is I'm actually saying what I am. So nobody can come up to me and go, "You're a codependent with abandonment issues and you have an addictive personality," and I can't be hurt by it because I've owned it and I've put it out there publicly. It doesn't bother me. I've accepted that about me. I know that about me. And it's led me to here. So there's a lot of negatives about being an addict and a drug addict throughout my life. But the positive spin is that I get to do what I do now.
And audience, I will make sure within the show notes to have Joe's information so that you can listen to his podcast yourself and you'll be able to hear his story and how he's worked through some of the things and become what you're actually talking about is going from a place of surviving to a place of thriving. And I talk about that quite a bit, from going from a place of fight or flight to going to a place of overcoming. That's actually what you're talking about. It's breaking free from those things that when you live in your authenticity, audience, I believe that you're choosing to break free. You're choosing to just be yourself and being okay with that. And unfortunately, I believe there's a lot of people out there that aren't okay with them being themselves. And once you learn to really love yourself, care for yourself, and radically accept who you are as a person, that helps you be present and have better relationships, not just with yourself, which is the most important relationship you can have, but also have great relationships with other people as well. So, in your mission, I really love the mission and the message that you're bringing out. Do you have any projects or plans in the near future that you're excited about that's coming up?
I try to keep it in the day as much as possible because I can go really far in the future and I'm never not taking care of where I'm at now. The goal and the mission where I am at this moment is to be seen more. I have a tendency to hide behind my words on Instagram. I have a tendency to hide behind the microphone. I don't have a tendency to show my face. It's just one more thing. Like I record episodes in the dark with my eyes closed. Like I need no distractions because I can get up in my head and get imposter syndrome. I can get self-conscious. And when you throw the video on there, that's just another layer of self-consciousness that is hard for me to deal with. How does it look? What's my face expression? What do people think? Like, I need to block all of that out. So the goal for me is to continue doing what I'm doing as I discover more about myself and reveal more in vulnerability, to relate to more people on a deeper level, but for me to be more comfortable being seen as I'm doing it. And I guess the goal, if you wanted to, an answer towards the future, the goal would be TED Talk, maybe a book one day. But I really, truly love the coaching so much, and I spend a lot of time there that has been more of a focus than me raising my profile.
I love your answer about being present and enjoying what's happening within the present and just being open to what the future brings. I think that's perfect. So, audience, as I said before, I will make sure to have his information out there so that you can follow him and his socials so that you can hear his message as he goes out. And whatever it comes authentically for him, you'll be able to see that as well. In conclusion of this podcast, what is the main theme or message you really want them to know?
Well, the name of the podcast is It's Not You, It's Your Trauma. Like, that needs to become your mantra. I thought I was my trauma. I thought I was my shame. I thought I was my guilt. I thought I was my abuse. It wasn't me. It was the things that happened and didn't happen. You are not broken in the sense that you have no worth and value. You've just been programmed and conditioned to believe that. And you got to get sick and tired. Like, I got sick and tired of surviving. I got sick and tired of feeling like I wasn't loved. I was sick and tired of not having a relationship with myself. I had to get angry. I had to get angry with the life I was living to get to thriving. So, anger, getting in touch with anger is such an important part of this, right? There's healthy anger, there's unhealthy anger. Anger is your power, it is your motivation, it is your protection. So when you move from sadness and fawning and self-hate out of that into slowly start getting into some of your anger, there's a shift that happens and you start to become unstuck. And it was almost like this thing has taken the best years of my life. It has almost destroyed me more than once. I am sick and tired of it. It stops now, because all addictions and numbing out and avoiding will end in failure. So the only way out is through.
And the most powerful thing I think a person can know is you are not your trauma, because so many people identify with their trauma, and your trauma is not you. That was something that happened to you, but it is not you. And thank God for that. It is not you.
Yes.
How can someone contact you if they're interested? And are you accepting new clients? I should ask that for coaching.
Yes, I am. You go to my website, joeryan.com. It has all the information there. You can sign up. I call it a consultation, but it's really a 30-minute session, right? So it's free. You come in, meet and greet. You see if I'm a good fit for you. If I'm not, feel good about yourself for coming out of hiding and showing yourself. If I am a good fit for you and you want to go forward, we could take the next steps.
Fantastic. So audience, again, I will have his information in the show notes as well as his podcast. So if you want to connect with him, you will be more than free to do so. Joe, I want to thank you for joining us today. I think the most important thing, audience, you can take from this, there was a lot you could take from this, is one, you are not your trauma. And secondly, it is okay. It is more than okay to be brave and face your authentic self, and within that, feel the feelings around that. I'd like to thank you for joining us today, audience. This wraps up another episode of Elisha Space, and as you move forward, continue in healing, happiness, and joy.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you'll subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. Now go, move forward in your healing journey.